Okay, so psychological factors. Remember, humans are very complicated. So there's many variations in different types of people. So as a designer, you're going to need to use those percentile ranges to try to account for those variations in people. Psychological factors. How can collection and interpretation of data be affected by limitations of our sense of perception? Okay, there are limitations to what you can perceive and what you can sense. How does collecting data about people's psychological factors, how is it impacted by those limitations? And then, as far as international mindedness, psychology is primarily a Western thing. There's recent neurological studies and studies on like the physiology of the brain, but psychology isn't widely accepted everywhere around the world. Physiological factors, as far as what your body tolerances are, how long people can sit for. Have you guys ever heard of? Have you ever played a Wii, and your Wii said to you, "Take a break, stop playing this game," and it showed you like a picture of a window or something like that? Have you ever seen that? Okay. That is just an example of the people who designed the game paying attention to what the limitations of the human body are. When you're doing a strenuous activity for a long time, you're going to want to take a break. They say, what is it? Is it 20-20-20? Yeah, 20-20-20. Have you ever heard that term?
Yeah. 20 minutes on, 20 minutes off, 20 minutes
No. 20 minutes on playing the game, then you look away 20 feet for 20 seconds to give you guys a break.
Right. To rest your eyes every 20 minutes, look away from a screen that's close to you. They're working on a laptop at something that's at least 20 feet away for 20 seconds. Okay, that's another quick way to understand what some of the limitations of the human body are. Okay, focus on something 20 feet away. There are physical characteristics of the human body, like we were talking about. Physiological factor data, comfort and fatigue, and then biomechanics. Biomechanics are like, what's the average hand strength, what's the flexibility in your fingers, your neck, your arms, your legs. All of those are taken into consideration to improve the performance of a particular design. Now, also consider ethical limitations, as in coming up with the design, for example, to account for as many people as possible. You also need to consider people with disabilities. And in fact, in the United States, they have the Americans with Disabilities Act, which mandates certain considerations that must be paid to design to consider people with disabilities. Stuff like putting ramps on buildings and having handicap accessible bathrooms, and one of the big things for us is any building that in the city of Lakewood that has more than 2 stories and that's not a residence is required to have an elevator. Okay, how does that consider? Well, the main part of the building has 3 stories. It has 2 elevators. Okay, there's one on the far side of the building, one closer to us. This part of the building, the Low Center, as of right now, does not have 3 stories. There's no elevator on this side of the building. However, those utility closets out the hallway, they were designed and put in there as elevator shafts. Okay, so this whole building was designed to go up another floor. So if they want to expand, they can add another floor onto the Low Center, but as soon as they do that, they're required by city ordinance to add an elevator in. So they made sure that they had a place for an elevator, and that those closets right off that atrium outside of that door was made to be an elevator shaft. Now it's just storage, but when we go up, there'll be an elevator there.
Would they add on another bit to the Low Center?
Maybe, probably. Actually, I know they're working on securing funding. Discuss the influence of perception when collecting data related to psychological factors. In other words, if you're sitting in a room and you're cold, you might be the only one in the room who feels cold. Everyone else might be sweating. Okay, so there are variations in the way people perceive things. So those variations, you need to, again, that's why you do case studies with multiple people. You can take the average. You need to figure out what your demographic is and then study that demographic. If you're studying the wrong demographic, it's not going to help you. There are commercial studies to figure out clothing sizes, and this is actually kind of a more recent phenomenon, is called vanity sizing. Have you guys ever heard of that? It's more prevalent in women's clothing than men's clothing, but it is out there. Basically what it is they design clothing, and clothing that, like, maybe years ago, for example, dress sizes, something that years ago was a size 12 dress, the exact same size, if it were made today, if they were using vanity sizing, would be listed as like something like a size 6. It's a psychological factor for someone to go buy a dress and say, oh, it's a size 12. Then they feel bad about themselves and they don't want to buy. If they see that it's a size 6 and they thought it was going to be a size 12, I'm like, oh, this is great. I'm going to buy more of this because these sizes are, more flattering to me. When it's all just numbers, it doesn't really mean anything. It's just psychological influences. Government-funded studies, like we said before, have found that the average American is becoming heavier and shorter. Maybe not shorter, but definitely heavier. Okay, and like I said earlier, the designs of those crash test dummies have been changed to actually reflect those new normals.